Okay, students, so let us begin. Just a minute. Okay. Students, we are studying magnetic materials, all right? Now, in the previous session, the topic that we were discussing was types of magnetic materials, okay? So, inside types of magnetic materials, okay, magnetic properties of materials or types of magnetic materials, we have finished two types already. The first one was diamagnetic materials or the property of diamagnetism, and the second one was paramagnetism, okay? So, I hope you all remember the difference between both of them, all right? Any material is a magnetic material if the material possesses magnetic dipole moment. Okay, fine. Now, what is the major difference between both of them is that in your diamagnetic materials, there are no unpaired electrons. Okay, everything is paired up. So the plus half and minus half spin, they cancel each other out and the net magnetic moment is zero. Okay. In case of paramagnetic material, paramagnetism is seen in materials which have unpaired electrons in them. So as you all can see in this first diagram A, please pay attention where my cursor is. So in a paramagnetic material, what happens? All the magnetic dipole moments, they are in random direction. So because they are in random direction, the net magnetic moment, that is the total magnetic moment, appears to be zero. But if we place this in an external magnetic field, okay, so they are aligned in one direction. All right, fine. And when they are aligned in one direction, all the magnetic dipole moments, we can say that the material has some magnetic dipole moment. It has some value. It is a non-zero value. Okay, fine. Now, students, what was the major difference? The major difference was that in diamagnetism, see, this is the external magnetic field, north to south. Okay, fine. So we all can see here inside diamagnetic material also, this end is behaving like north and this end is behaving like south. So they repel each other. So we can say that, okay, we know that inside the material, the magnetic field lines are from south to north, right? And outside the material, it is from north to south. Okay, fine. So here in diamagnetic materials, if you all can see, the direction of the inside magnetic field is opposite to that of the direction of the outside magnetic field. Okay, fine. Whereas if I talk about paramagnetic materials, so in paramagnetic materials, see over here, the direction of the inside magnetic field is same as that of the outside magnetic field. Reason is, students, see, outside here it is from north to south, and inside this part behaves like south and this part will behave like north. So they'll have attraction between them. Now, this was in a uniform magnetic field. Okay. What happens in a non-uniform magnetic field? Very simple. In a non-uniform magnetic field, see, a diamagnetic material will try to oppose the magnetic field, whereas a paramagnetic material will try to attract the magnetic field. Okay, as simple as that. So, a non-uniform magnetic field means what? That at some places the magnetic field, magnetic strength is more, and at some places the magnetic strength is weak, meaning that number of magnetic lines of force. Okay, so where the number of magnetic lines of force are more means more magnetic strength. So in non-uniform magnetic field, this is not consistent. Okay, the magnetic strength is not consistent. So if you place a diamagnetic material in a non-uniform magnetic field, what happens? The diamagnetic material will try to move from a stronger magnetic region to a weaker magnetic region because it opposes the magnetic field. Whereas a paramagnetic material, if you place it in a non-uniform magnetic field, it will go from a weaker region to a stronger region. Okay. Students, the third type of magnetic material that we are discussing today is ferromagnetic material or ferromagnetism. Ferromagnetism is like a higher version of paramagnetism. Okay, fine. Now, students, first let me just quickly explain to you all what is happening, and then we can just go through the points written in your textbook. You all can see this diagram over here. Okay, fine. What is the main difference between a paramagnetic material and a ferromagnetic material is that, students, in paramagnetic material, all the dipole moments are in random direction. Okay, like in this diagram, how they have shown in this diagram. Okay, this A diagram. Okay, all the dipole moments are in random direction. So this is a paramagnetic material. But in a ferromagnetic material, if you all see over here, okay, if you all observe this diagram, students, in a ferromagnetic material also, the dipole moments are in random direction. Okay, and when we keep it in external magnetic field, so all the dipole moments are aligned in one direction, okay, aligned in the same direction as that of the external magnetic field. So we can say that the material is magnetized. Okay, we have studied, right, about magnetization and magnetic intensity. But one different thing about a ferromagnetic material is that you all can see here there are sections over here. Okay, where you all can see the partitions over here. So in a ferromagnetic material, inside one partition, okay, whatever atoms are present over here in this one particular partition, all of them will have their dipole moments in one direction only. Okay, I hope you all are understanding. Here they have just shown one arrow, but here there are many atoms, and all the atoms present in this one particular section is called a domain. Okay, so in this one domain, all the atoms will have their dipole moment like this in this direction. Whereas if I talk about this domain, in this domain, so sorry, we just draw it again. In this domain, all the atoms will have their dipole moment in this direction. I hope you all are understanding. So overall, when you all will see, in every domain, the direction of dipole moment is different. But inside the domain, all the atoms have same direction of the dipole moment. So it becomes easy to align them. Okay, like for example, if this one is there, you all have to just turn around all the atoms and you all have to make it come like this. Okay, like a horizontal line. So when they are already in one direction, aligning them to another direction becomes easy as compared to a paramagnetic material. Because students, in a paramagnetic material, everything is random here and there. Okay, fine. But that is not the case in ferromagnetic. In ferromagnetic, there are sections called domains, and inside the domain, all the atoms have their dipole moment in same direction. I hope you all are understanding. It is little difficult to understand from here because they have shown only one arrow. Think of it that there are multiple arrows over here, okay, in the same direction. So you all will understand that there are multiple atoms all having dipole moment in the same direction inside this domain. Okay, fine. I hope you all are understanding. So in ferromagnetism, what happens when you keep this ferromagnetic material in external magnetic field, you all can see all the dipole moments have now aligned along the direction of external magnetic field. Okay, so basically all these small domains have now converged to become one big domain. Okay, fine. So same concept is same like paramagnetism only. Only thing new topic concept over here is the domain part. Okay, and because of that domain presence, it is easy to align them in one direction as compared to a paramagnetic material. Okay, fine. All right, now let's see what is written over here. Okay. All right, see. Atoms or molecules of ferromagnetic material possess magnetic moment similar to that of paramagnetic materials. Okay, fine. All right, this part is not important. Let's move ahead. Yeah, your students all can mark this point. Here they have written what are the types of materials that are ferromagnetic materials or that show ferromagnetism. So you can see iron, cobalt, nickel, okay, and some metal alloys. All right, fine. Students, iron that is there, especially soft iron. So soft iron is the best type of ferromagnetic material. Okay, you all can, if you all want, you all can note it down somewhere over here that soft iron is the best ferromagnetic material. Okay, so whenever in devices where ferromagnetic materials are required, soft iron is used. Alright, fine. Next, students, you all can see this subtopic domain theory over here. So the domain concept that I just explained to you all, that is written over here. Okay, fine. In ferromagnetic materials, there is a strong interaction called exchange coupling or exchange interaction between the neighboring magnetic dipole moments. Now, what is this exchange coupling? Exchange coupling, exchange interaction, just alternative names. So here only see they have written in this blue colored box what is exchange interaction. Exchange interaction is stronger than usual. You all can mark this blue colored box, like you all can star mark it and keep. Exchange interaction is stronger than usual dipole-dipole interaction by an order of magnitude. So basically, you all know what dipole-dipole interaction is, okay? It is a type of intermolecular force of attraction, okay? Fine, between two molecules. So attraction between two dipoles. So if you all have to compare, so basically exchange interaction is type of an intermolecular force attraction kind of thing, but it is more strong than a dipole-dipole interaction. Due to this exchange interaction, all the atomic dipoles in a domain get aligned with each other. Now, what is the purpose of this exchange interaction, students? The thing that I just explained, that inside one section, all the dipole moments of the atoms are in same direction. Yes or no? So this exchange interaction will lead to that. Okay, it will lead to all the atoms aligned in one direction. Inside all the atoms, magnetic dipole moment align in one direction. Okay, inside one domain. I hope you all are understanding. So when this happens, it is called exchange interaction. Okay, fine. Uh, okay, so you all can see due to this interaction, small regions are formed in which all the atoms have their magnetic moments aligned in the same direction. Such a region is called a domain. Okay, and the common direction of magnetic moment is called the domain axis. So where it is, whether it is horizontal or vertical inside one domain, what is the direction of the dipole moment, that is called domain axis. So these are just terms that you all are supposed to remember. What if they ask you all a 2 marks question, a small question that explain what domain theory is? So in that, you all have to mention all these points. Okay, fine. When you all are writing the entire answer for ferromagnetism, you all can just write the important parts from this domain theory part. Okay, fine. Next, you all can say domain size. What is the size of one domain? Usually, it is from 10 raised to minus 6 to 10 raised to minus 4 meters. Okay, and inside one domain, there are about 10 raised to 10 to 10 raised to 17 atoms. Okay, so one domain will consist of these many atoms, and all the atoms will have their dipole moments aligned in one particular direction. Okay, fine. I hope you all are understanding this. Okay, then the next, there is one more term to remember. The boundary between the adjacent domains with different orientation is called domain wall. So the boundary that is there, the outline that is there, it is called domain wall. So these are just terms, students, that you all are supposed to remember. Okay, fine. Let's move ahead. In unmagnetized state, the domain axis of different domains are oriented randomly. Okay, unmagnetized means I have not yet placed it in external magnetic field, resulting in the net magnetic moment of the whole material to be zero. Same concept like your paramagnetism. Okay, fine. Even if the magnetic moments of individual domains are non-zero. See, students, because inside one domain, everything is aligned in same direction, right? So if I have to consider the net magnetic moment of an individual domain, it is not going to be zero. But overall, if I'll consider, it is going to be zero, because just like, see, here it is horizontal, so there is one opposite direction domain present over here. So they'll be cancelled out anyways. When an external magnetic field is applied, domains try to align themselves along the direction of the applied magnetic field. Okay, fine. The number of domains aligning in that direction increases as the magnetic field increases. So if you increase the magnetic field, okay, how does the magnetic field increases? Students, remember how we did magnetization. How a normal material is magnetized, it is kept inside a solenoid. Yes or no? Solenoid is current carrying, and because of that current carrying coil, a magnetic field is already present inside the solenoid. So we keep a material inside the solenoid, and magnetic properties are induced in that material because of the external magnetic field. So if you all will increase the current, more strong will be the external magnetic field, more is the amount of magnetization of the material. So that is the point they have written over here. Okay, the number of domains aligning in that direction increases as magnetic field is increased. Okay, fine. This process, you all can mark this point. Okay, this process is referred to as flipping or domain rotation. So you all can see all the magnetic dipole moments have now been aligned to the direction of the external magnetic field. So basically they have been rotated to one direction, right? So they have just given a terminology to it called domain rotation. Okay, fine. All right. And the last point is what I just discussed, that everything will combine to form one big domain. All the small domains will align themselves to form one big domain. Okay, fine. Now, this was one thing that makes ferromagnetic materials different from paramagnetic materials. Okay, students, please let me know if my voice is clear. Everyone is able to hear me, right, properly?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. All right. Now, there is one more point that makes ferromagnetism different from paramagnetism, and that is this last point. Okay. see, in non-uniform magnetic field, ferromagnetic material tends to move from weaker part to stronger part, same like paramagnetism, okay? Because ferromagnetic materials also attract the external magnetic field. So if you keep them in a non-uniform magnetic field, they'll move from weaker part to stronger part. That is very obvious. This last paragraph, very important. Okay, when the strong external magnetic field is completely removed, it does not set the domain boundaries back to its original position. When you remove the external magnetic field from a ferromagnetic material, it does not mean that these domains and everything are formed again. It does not go back to its original position or like how it was before. This is not the case in paramagnetism, students. In paramagnetism, if you remove the external magnetic field, all the dipole moments will become random again, just like before. But that is not the case in ferromagnetism. When you remove the external magnetic field, it does not set the domain boundaries back to the original position. And the net magnetic moment is still non-zero. Okay, it means it still has, even after removing external magnetic field, the dipole moments are aligned, okay, in one direction, and there is still some net magnetic dipole moment in it. It is non-zero. And ferromagnetic materials, so because of this property, ferromagnetic materials are said to retain magnetization. Okay, they'll try to keep those magnetic properties with them. That is the reason ferromagnetic materials are better than paramagnetic materials. Because students, see, paramagnetic materials possess magnetism only until external magnetic field is present. As soon as you'll remove the external magnetic field, all the dipole moments in again back to random direction and magnetism is gone. Okay, but in case of ferromagnetism, even after removing the external magnetic field, the ferromagnetic material will still possess the magnetic properties. It will still have the magnetic properties inside it. Okay, fine. So this is one important, you can say, a factor of a ferromagnetic material. Such materials are used to for preparing permanent magnets. It is obvious I cannot use a paramagnetic material to prepare a permanent magnet, because paramagnetic material shows magnetism only in external magnetic field. Okay, but that is not the case in ferromagnetism. Ferromagnetism just needs that start. It just needs the external magnetic field for the beginning, and later it will still retain the magnetic properties. Okay, fine. So students, this was about ferromagnetism. All right, fine. We'll get to back to this numerical, don't worry. But before that, there's one more, this small topic. Let us just discuss it quickly. Effect of temperature on ferromagnetic materials. Okay, fine. Um, okay, so you all can mark this point over here, students. As the temperature of a ferromagnetic material is increased, the domain structure start distorting because the exchange coupling between the neighboring moments, it is neighboring, okay, because of the neighboring moments weakens. All right, students, the exchange coupling, okay, the domains are formed, and inside every domain all the atoms have the dipole moment in same direction. This entire procedure is called exchange coupling. This is what makes ferromagnetic material a ferromagnetic material. Okay, fine. But if in case you all increase the external temperature, okay, you all increase the external temperature, these domain walls that are there, they start to break. Okay, and once the domain walls start to break, then there won't be domains existing, right? The thing that makes ferromagnetic material different won't be present anymore. And it is possible that the dipole moments will go into random direction, just like in paramagnetic materials. Okay, try to understand in ferromagnetic materials, because there are domains formed, it is different from paramagnetic. But if you all will increase the temperature around a ferromagnetic material, the domain walls, everything will start to collapse, and the the dipole moments will go into random directions, just like in paramagnetic materials. Okay, fine. So this thing that happens, okay, see, it is written over here, at a certain temperature, depending upon the material, the domain structure collapses totally, and the material will behave like a paramagnetic material. So if you always keep on increasing the temperature outside a ferromagnetic material, after some time or after certain temperature, it starts behaving like a paramagnetic material. Okay, now this temperature plays a very important role. The temperature at which, you all can mark this point, the temperature at which a ferromagnetic material transforms into a paramagnetic substance is called Curie temperature. Okay, indicated by capital T subscript C. Okay, fine. So this Curie temperature that is there, you all can see here in your textbook they have given this table for different materials. What is their Curie temperature? Okay, fine. And you all can see this graph over here, students. Okay, on the y-axis there is susceptibility, and on the x-axis there is temperature. Okay, fine. I hope you all remember the relation that we did in paramagnetism. Let me just go back to that. Okay, fine. See, in paramagnetism we started with this. Okay, fine. That is, your magnetization is directly proportional to the magnetic field, inversely proportional to the temperature. And after solving and everything, we obtained one conclusion that susceptibility is inversely proportional to temperature. So let's get back to this graph again. Effect of temperature on ferromagnetic material. On y-axis there is susceptibility, x-axis there is temperature, inversely proportional. So if susceptibility is increasing, temperature is decreasing. You all can see the curve, right? Here the curve is going on increasing and here it is decreasing because they have inverse relation. Okay, fine. Now here comes a point on this temperature scale. There is a point called Curie temperature. Okay, fine. So until that Curie temperature is not reached, okay, until the Curie temperature is not reached, the material behaves like a ferromagnetic material. Once the external temperature crosses that Curie temperature value, it will behave like a paramagnetic material. Okay, very simple graph, very simple to understand. Okay, fine. All right. So here what they have written, okay, the relation between the magnetic susceptibility of a material when it has acquired paramagnetic property. See, we all know that susceptibility is inversely proportional to temperature. So you all can see susceptibility inversely proportional to temperature. Here you all are supposed to take the temperature difference. That is temperature minus the Curie temperature. And when you all remove the proportionality sign, you all will have constant capital C. Students, I have mentioned last time what capital C is. Capital C means material specific Curie constant. Okay, fine. It is a constant, but what is capital C? You all should know. So it is a material specific Curie constant. For different materials, we have different Curie constants. Just like how we for different materials, we have different Curie temperature. Okay, fine. So this is effect of temperature on ferromagnetism. All right, fine. Okay, students, please let me know if you all are understanding till now what is happening.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, miss.
Okay, fine. Um, all right. Now, let us just quickly do this numerical first, and then I'll move on to the next topic, that is hysteresis. All right. So, okay, fine. Everyone, please pay attention. I'll read out the question first. All right. A domain in ferromagnetic iron is in the form of cube of side 1 micrometer. Okay, so we have a iron which is ferromagnetic in nature, and because it is ferromagnetic, it has domains inside it. So the domain inside it is in a cube form. Okay, like one domain structure is like a cube. Obviously this is in 3D. Okay, you're writing the diagram is in 2D, but the material is in 3D, right? So one domain is in a cube format inside this ferromagnetic iron whose side is 1 micrometer. Okay, they have given the side of the cube. Estimate the number of iron atoms in the domain. So we have to find out that how many iron atoms are present inside that domain, inside that cubical domain, maximum possible dipole moment, and magnetization of the domain. Okay, all right. So that is the they have given. We have this cubical domain. So we are supposed to find out how many number of atoms are present in that domain, what is the total magnetic moment of that domain, and how much is the extent of magnetization. All right, fine. What is the data given to us? Obviously, side of the cube is given. Okay. Next thing, you can see the molecular mass of iron because we are dealing with iron. Okay. So they have given the molecular mass in terms of gram per mole, and they have given us density, that is 7.9 gram per centimeter cube. Okay. Again, in CGS systems, they have given. Assume that each iron atom has a dipole moment of Dipole moment means, students, small m. Okay, I hope you all remember this. Small m, which has a unit ampere meter square, because when you determine magnetic dipole moment from a current carrying loop, from a current carrying circular loop, it is NIA. I hope you all remember this, where small n stands for number of turns, I is current, A is area. That is why unit of I ampere, unit of area meter square. So dipole moment's unit is ampere meter square. Okay, fine. So for one atom, they have given us what is m. We are supposed to find the total dipole moment. Okay, fine. Students, it is very simple to understand. See, if you know the dipole moment for one atom, you all can find the total dipole moment of the domain, right? Multiply this value into the total number of atoms. It's just like cost of one pen is this much. So what is cost of 5 pens? You all will multiply 5 with the cost of 1. So just like that, okay. Dipole moment of one atom you all know, and you all are supposed to find the maximum possible dipole moment, means the total dipole moment of the domain. So if you all come to know how many atoms are present in the domain, you all can simply multiply the value and get this unknown, okay. But finding the number of atoms is also one question. Okay, I hope you all are understanding what I'm trying to say. I hope you all have understood the question till now. Now let's look at the solution. Okay, first thing they have done is they have found the volume of the cubical domain. We know the side, okay, that is 1 micrometer. So we can find the volume. Yes or no? It will be side cube for a cube. So you can see here 10 raised to minus 6 raised to 3. Okay, but this is in meter square. We have to, this is in meter cube. Okay, it's volume. Please see to it that you all write the units and everything properly. So it is in meter cube. We have to convert it into centimeter cube. So 1 meter is 10 raised to 2 centimeter. So if it is meter cube, you all have to multiply it with 10 raised to 6. Okay. So minus 18 into 10 raised to 6 will give me 10 raised to minus 12 centimeter cube. This is the volume, okay, of the domain. All right, fine. Now, first thing to find is what is the first find that we are supposed to solve for is the number of atoms, total number of atoms in that domain. Okay, fine. So see, students, I hope you all are familiar with Avogadro's number. Okay, it is represented as capital N subscript A. Okay, fine, which they have not written over here. Here, see, the number of atoms in the domain, it is indicated by capital N. Now, let's try to figure out what this formula is. Okay, fine. All right, students, can anyone tell me what this Avogadro's number is? What does that mean? What does this, its indication is Na, but they have not written it over here so that you won't get confused. But what does that stand for? Avogadro's
Number
number
of
indicates?
molecules or atoms in one mole.
Number of particles in 1 mole.
Yes, number of molecules or atoms in 1 mole or number of units in 1 mole. In this case, we are discussing about atoms or atoms. You all can write it down, students, somewhere for people who don't know. Draw this symbol. This is symbol for Avogadro's number. Okay, fine, Avogadro's number. And you all can write down number of units in 1 mole. Okay, this value that is there, this value that is given, it is number of units. Units means it will depend whether we are discussing about atoms or particles or what. So number of units in 1 mole. Okay, fine. All right. So let's try to decode this formula that gives us the number of atoms. Okay, the total number of atoms in my cubical domain, the total number of atoms of the ion. All right. So this is number of atoms in 1 mole. Okay, number of atoms in 1 mole into this part. So students, please concentrate on this part. This part is nothing but mass upon molar mass. Okay, students, what is mass upon molar mass? What is this
Moles.
formula used to?
Number of moles.
Yes, very good. Number of moles. Okay, number of moles is nothing but mass upon molar mass. Okay, so what they have done is, in order to find the total number of atoms, first find the number of moles into the number of moles, number of atoms present in 1 mole. Okay, fine. Number of atoms present in 1 mole is this much, 6.023 into 10 raised to 23. ठीक है, इतना एटम्स होता है एक मोल में, और अभी हमें ढूंढना है कि टोटल मोल्स कितने हैं. So total moles we can find out, right, by mass upon molar mass. So by doing mass upon molar mass, you all will get total number of moles, okay, and you know that in 1 mole how many atoms are there? 6.023 into 10 raised to 23. So multiply that total moles into with this value. So everything they have merged up in one formula, okay, and this will give me the total number of atoms inside that cubicle, inside that cube. Okay, students, see, mass is given to you all, molar mass is given to you all. Okay, fine. Student, please let me know if you all are understanding what is happening till now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Here one thing is that, okay, I skipped one point. Student, molar mass is directly given to you all. See, molar mass, or also called as molecular mass, is directly given. Mass is not directly given. Okay, instead of mass, they have given you all density. But you all can easily find, that is the reason we have found this volume. Okay, fine, because mass is nothing but volume into density. Okay, density is mass upon volume. So if you all modify that formula, mass will become volume into density. So we know volume, we know density because it is given in the question, so we will get mass. Okay, so mass upon molecular mass is already given in the question. Mass is not directly given. Instead of mass, density is given, so we can anyways find out the value for mass. Okay, mass upon molar mass gives me number of moles, and into Avogadro's number is atoms in 1 mole. So if I multiply both of them, I'll get the total number of atoms, which is my first find. Okay, this is my first find. Next find is to find the maximum possible dipole moment. Okay, fine. So students, maximum possible dipole moment, they have given us dipole moment for 1 atom. This is the dipole moment for 1 atom. I know the total number of atoms. Just multiply both of them, you all will get the maximum possible dipole moment. As simple as that. Finally, find magnetization. So students, magnetization is nothing but net magnetic moment upon volume. So net magnetic moment or the maximum magnetic moment means the total magnetic moment. अभी just ढूंढा हमने that upon the domain volume जो start में ही ढूंढा था. So if I put up it in this formula, I'll get the value for magnetization. Okay, unit is very simple, students. See, small n's unit is ampere meter square, right? Per volume ka unit is meter cube. So it will be cancelled out. So ampere per meter is the unit for magnetization. Please see to it that you all write units whenever you all are solving numerical. So this is this numerical. Please star mark it and keep. Okay. And everyone, please let me know if you all have understood this numerical.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. All right. So students, see, next topic is hysteresis. So I'll cover this hysteresis topic. And then lastly, there are two small theory topics. This we'll be doing next time. And also the numericals ahead. Okay.